The next conic section we are going to talk about is parabolas. You already learned about parabolas when you took analytical geometry 2 years ago. So if you look at these equations, this one on the left should look very familiar. You learned about how to graph parabolas with this vertex form back in that analytic geometry class 2 years ago. So if you have y equals and you have the x squared, you learned that this h and this k is how you're going to find the vertex of your parabola. So if you notice, we take the opposite of the number inside the parentheses to be the x-coordinate of the vertex, and then we keep the same sign as the number at the end of the equation for the y-coordinate of the vertex. The axis of symmetry, if you remember, is a line that goes straight through the center of your U-shaped graph, and it's the axis of symmetry because it is a line of symmetry. Both sides of the U, if you folded your paper up on that line of symmetry, then both sides would lay right on each other. So it's the line of symmetry or the axis of symmetry, and it is x equals this x coordinate of your vertex because it goes straight through the vertex, which is that lowest point. Or if it's opening upside down, it's the highest point. The new part of this is going to be finding the focus and the directrix. All right, so the focus is just like having a focus inside of an ellipse. This point or focus for a parabola is going to be located on that axis of symmetry right in line with that vertex, and it's going to be inside the U shape. So the focus is going to be somewhere in there. So what you're going to do is to find the focus, this order pair of that point right there, it's going to have the same x-coordinate as your vertex. And then to find the y-coordinate of your focus, you're just going to add this value, 1 over 4a, to the y-coordinate of the vertex. So if you look here, a is the number in the equation that's right in front of the parentheses being multiplied there. So you just do 1 over 4 times that number there, and whatever that is gets added to that y-coordinate, and then ta-da, you have your order pair for your focus. The directrix is a line that is perpendicular to this axis of symmetry. So since this axis of symmetry is horizontal or vertical, the directrix is going to be a horizontal dotted line, and it's going to be outside of the U-shaped parabola. So the focus is inside and it is a point. The directrix is outside and it is a line. All right, so the equation of the line for the directrix is going to be y equals, and then you're going to subtract the 1 minus 4a from the k value instead of adding it like we did for the focus. Because if we start at the vertex here and we add a value to y, it moves it up. That's where the focus is. So if we take that same vertex and we subtract that same value, that's how it becomes lower below that parabola. So it probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense when I'm just talking about letters here. So we're going to do an example with numbers in just a minute. Another new thing that you did not do when you were in analytic geometry 2 years ago is you only did parabolas with this equation here, where you had y equals and you had x was squared. So it either opened up like this or it opened down. If this a value was negative, remember it flipped upside down like a frown. Another new part that we're going to do today is this time we're going to have x equals and y is squared. So whenever you have that, your parabola is now going to open to the right, or it could open to the left. All right, so that is another new thing. You're still going to find your vertex as h and k, but this time if you notice, h and k have traded places. So if you have y squared, then you take the opposite of what's in the parentheses with the y, and that becomes the y-coordinate. And this time you keep the same as whatever's on the end, and that's the x-coordinate. So if you notice, they've kind of traded places. The axis of symmetry is now y equals the k value because the axis of symmetry is going to go horizontally this time, like that. And then for the focus, you can see we're adding 1 over 4a to the x coordinate this time instead of to the y coordinate like we did on these. And then the directrix is going to be x equals, and we're still going to do h minus 1 over 4a. So it's still going to be subtracting, but we're going to be subtracting from the x coordinate of the vertex for the directrix instead of the y like we do on these where they open up and down. So let's actually look at some examples. All right. I've already worked this one out in class. But here are some better pictures of what I was just explaining. If x is squared, it's going to open up or it's going to open down. If you notice, the axis of symmetry goes right through the middle. The focus is an order pair or a point right on that axis of symmetry inside the U shape. And then the directrix is a horizontal line outside of that U shape. And if you notice, this distance here and this distance here is that 1 over 4a. And then the horizontal opening ones side to side here are the same thing. The axis of symmetry is horizontal. The focus is on that axis of symmetry inside of the U. And the directrix is outside of the U, and it's perpendicular to that axis of symmetry. So it's going vertically this time. So this first example that I did in class, we had y equals with x squared. So it was going to be like this, either opening up or down. So we know from analytic geometry that if this a value is positive, we know it's going to open up. So we do know that because this 2 is positive, we know that it's going to open up. So we can find these 4 things. The axis of symmetry is x equals h. Well, h is the opposite of the number inside the parentheses. So the opposite of a plus 3 is a minus 3. So the axis of symmetry is that x equals negative 3. So you can draw a vertical dotted line through the x-axis at negative 3. So that orange line that I have drawn there is the axis of symmetry. To find the vertex, our notes say h and k. It's the opposite of the number in the parentheses for the x-coordinate, and you keep the same number at the end for the y-coordinate. So if you look here, the opposite of 3 is negative 3. And then we have a minus 1 at the end, which is a negative 1. We keep that one the same. So negative 3, negative 1 is the vertex. So when you're going to graph, you can just count negative 3, negative 1, and that is the vertex. To find the focus, we said h, that's the same. So we know that the x-coordinate of the focus is going to be negative 3. Then we have to find 1 over 4a and add it to the y-coordinate of the vertex. So 1 over 4a. I worked that out over off to the side here. So 1 over 4 times a. Well, a is this number here, 2. So 4 times 2 is 8. So this is 1/8. So this 1 over 4a, this 1/8, is going to get added to the y-coordinate of the vertex. So the y-coordinate of the vertex was negative 1. So we need to add to it this 1/8. So negative 1 plus 1/8 is a negative 7/8. So if you plot this order pair, that'll be the focus. So we went negative 3, and then we went a negative 7/8, which is almost 1, but not quite. So it's inside that U shape. And then the directrix is k minus the 1 over 4a. So k is the y-coordinate of that vertex, which was negative 1. And this time we have to subtract our 1/8. So negative 1 minus 1/8 is a negative 9/8. So that's a little more than negative 1. So just past a negative 1, that's where that directrix is. To get these other 2 dots, I used this a right here. So if you think of slope from like y equals mx plus b, we know it's not slope, but this helps us get a couple more points when we're going vertically like this. So from here, you can count up 2 over 1. And you could do it the other way because we know this is a line of symmetry. So that's how I got those other 2 points there for this one. So you can do that when you have those vertical opening parabolas. So that's the example we did in class. So if we do another example from scratch here. All right, this first one here. To find the vertex, it's H and K. So we know H is here, K is here. And it's always the opposite of whatever we see here. So because it says -4, we know the x-coordinate is +4, and then the y-coordinate is a +1 because we keep that one the same, H and K. So +4, +1 is the vertex this time. We know that since it's y equals and that x is squared, we know it's either going to be an opening up, or it's going to be opening down like this. And we also know that since this first number is positive, it's going to be opening up. All right, so axis of symmetry. So if we look at our notes again, the axis of symmetry was x equals h. So x equals 4. And we know that it has to go through that vertex. So that's going to be the axis of symmetry, because we know it's going to open up like this. And then the focus is going to be h, and then k plus 1/4a. So we need to find that 1/4a. So I'm going to do it down here. 1/4 times a. Well, a is this number in front, which is 2/3. So this is 1/8/3, which is 3/8. So in order to write the order pair for the focus, looking at your notes, the x-coordinate is going to stay h, the same as the vertex. So it's going to be 4. And then to get the y-coordinate, we're going to add that 1/4a, or that 3/8 to the y-coordinate. The y-coordinate was 1, and then we need to add the 3/8 to it. So that would be 11/8. So the focus is at 4 and 11/8. If you like decimals better, you could always do it in decimals, but I just left it as a fraction. So 4 and 11/8. So that's 1 and 3/8. So it's 1 and just a little bit. So it should be a little lower actually, but it's in there. And then the directrix, we know, is a line, so it's y equals, and this time we're going to subtract the 3/8 from our y-coordinate. So that'll be y equals 5/8. So 5/8 is less than 1, so it's below the dot here. So our directrix should be in there somewhere. And then we know that this is going to open up. So using my 2/3 for my vertex, up 2/3. So it's going to look something like this. Okay. So that's how you do the ones where they either open up or they open down. If you have the negative in the front, like number 2 here, that's how you know it's going to open down. These are 2 examples that I already did in class of the ones that open either right or left. So this is where we would have to use these notes over here to find everything. So let's see if I have one that I haven't already done, so we can do one together. So here's one on number 6 where we have x equals, and then we have the y squared. That's going to be one that opens sideways like this, where you have the y squared. So it's either going to open to the right or it's going to open to the left. So that means when we look at our notes to help us, we need to be looking at this column over here because we have x equals and y squared. So for number 6, our axis of symmetry is going to be y equals k. Well, remember, this time the h and the k have traded places. K is inside the parentheses this time, and h is at the end. So the axis of symmetry is y equals the k. And if you notice, k is the one we changed to its opposite this time. So since this is a +5, k is a -5. So y equals -5 is going to be axis of symmetry. So crossing through the y-axis at -5, this is that axis of symmetry. So this is the line that's going straight through the center of the U. So it would be, this line here going straight through the center. To find the vertex, it is still h and k. You just have to remember that h and k have traded places on this one. So the h is -5 because that's the number at the end this time. And the k is the opposite of what's inside. So -5, -5 is going to be the vertex. So -5, -5, we can plot that point, and that is the vertex. And then the focus. To find the focus and the directrix, remember we need to find that 1/4a. So a is still the number in the front. So in the front, we actually have a negative, which is understood to be a -1. So this is 1/-4 or -1/4. So our focus, we're going to take the h, or the x coordinate, -5, and we're going to add a -1/4 to it. The k is going to stay the same this time. So the y coordinate stays the same this time. So the focus is going to be a -5 1/4, or -21/4 if you want to write it as an improper fraction. So that's 5 1/4, so that's a little more than -5, and then down to -5. So our focus is just past it right here. And since this is negative in the front, it's going to open to the left instead of to the right. On these, you don't have to worry about getting additional points. Just make sure it's opening the right way. And then for the directrix, our notes say it's going to be x equals, and this time we're going to subtract our -1/4 from the h. So the h was -5, so we're going to subtract our -1/4. Minus a negative is plus a positive. So x equals a -19/4. So that's going to be just shy of -5. So it's going to be right here on the outside of the u. So that is our sideways parabola.